Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding that we think if we start living by spiritual principles and start applying these truths in our lives that we don't go through hard times anymore. And I hate to dispel you of that notion. But they still come. We still go through difficult seasons. But what I want to offer to you today is that when you take these spiritual truths and apply them and practice them in your lives, when the hard times come, you thrive, you transform. You are revealed as more of the truth that you are through them. We're not defeated by life. We are lifted by Spirit through life. Amen? I could just stop right there. We could go home early today, but we're talking today about our calling and our equipment. that we are all, I said it's uniquely called, uniquely equipped. That we are each of us called by life to give who and what we are into service of the whole and into fulfillment of our own soul. And everything we need for that task is already ours. That's the point. A young boy was called. He was 6 years old, and he was called to be the ring bearer in his uncle's wedding. Uh-oh, he's right. Well, it was explained what he was to do, and he said yes, he would do that. And he took it very seriously. He began closing his bedroom door and practicing. His mom was like, wow, he's really into this. As a matter of fact, he asked his mother what the ring bearer wore, and she said, well, a suit and a tie. And he said, well, can you get me a suit and tie so I can practice? And she said, okay. And so for weeks leading up to this wedding, he would go in his room, close the door, and practice. It came time for the wedding, and he was so ready. He didn't appear to be nervous at all. He was poised. He was prepared. His dad was a groomsman in the wedding party, and so as the dad was getting ready to walk down, he said, are you okay? You have everything you need? He said, I'm good, Dad. And he takes this. It was time. The wedding director, someone said, okay, it's your turn. He takes a step out into the aisle. And people started laughing. And the laughter shook him a little bit. He was like, what? And kind of began to disturb him. And he kept doing it because he was committed to it. And finally, he got all the way down the front and he burst into tears and ran and put his arms around his dad's legs. And his dad bent over and hugged him and said, what's wrong, buddy? He said, I was just doing it like the best I knew how to do it. I'm sorry I did it wrong. He said, what are you talking about, did it wrong? He's like, what were you doing? He said, I was being the ring bearer. He had a calling. And he did it uniquely. The way that his soul offered guidance to do it. And it didn't feel like it didn't get the experience, the reception he thought it was going to, but they're still talking about that wedding. We're talking about it this morning, aren't we? So, you're called. You are. You're called to be you fully and freely. You're called to give your gifts and talents into humanity to support and serve others and have your fulfillment there. And you're going to do it uniquely as is right and fitting for your soul and your heart and your mind. And sometimes it may feel like they don't get me. Sometimes it's hard to show up as your authentic self, right? But that is the calling. What is it that keeps us from, as Rumi says, the discovery and delivery of the authentic self? One word, what is it? Fear. You know this. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, all of those things. So we alter and edit how we show up. We play it safe. We use our armor to protect ourselves from criticism and judgment. And the armor may be keeping the criticism and the judgment out, but guess what? It's keeping our authentic heart and soul in. And so it is a journey to answer the calling, to deliver who and what you are into life. But it is the best game in town, I'm here to tell you. Joseph Campbell, remember Joseph Campbell? He wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and he described the hero's journey. It was a PBS special. It's a universal understanding of this story that humanity has been telling forever about this journey of life. And everything from Harry Potter and the Hunger Games all the way back to the Odyssey, it's the same story of someone who is called to greatness and faces obstacle after obstacle, resistance after resistance, but perseveres through the most dire of circumstances and overcomes and brings a gift back into their world. The reason this story keeps being told in every generation is because it's the truth of your soul, of your life, that you are here to give something that cannot come in any other way. You see, God does not run out of ideas. God doesn't copy and paste from one person to the next. Every soul is a unique expression, and not by accident. We're here for a purpose, for a holy purpose. Ralph Waldo Emerson said it this way: the fact that I am here shows me that the soul had need of an organ. Shall I not assume the post? But often we don't assume the post. Often we hide, and we deflect, and we armor. So the call today is for each of us to feel the calling on our own lives, to be who and what God has created us to be in a greater and more powerful way. I'm going to use the word greatness. And I want to just caution us a little bit around that. Greatness does not necessarily mean Nobel Prize winning, change the world kind of stuff. Greatness can be the way you're a grandmother to that child, and you don't know, but if you show up as your authentic, loving self, maybe that grandchild does win the Nobel Prize. You don't know. But everything works together, and when we each show up as the greatness of our own being, we transform the planet. We heal others. We are part of the active evolution of spirit in humanity. That's what we're about today. As Joseph Campbell described the hero's journey, the steps are very much the same in all of these great stories, but there are really three major pieces I want to talk about today. It's the calling, the transformation, and the return. Acts 1, 2, and 3, if you're following along at home. Act 1, we start in the ordinary world, as Campbell describes it. We are, as Buddha describes, we are chopping wood and carrying water. We are attending to our human lives. We are doing the tasks necessary to be functional in the world, and everything is normal. And then comes, what is it? The call. We get an invitation. For Harry Potter, it was a letter that came into Privet Lane under the door. Do you remember? The letter said, "You're more than you know yourself to be. You're being invited to a different experience of life." For those younger, in the Hunger Games, the call came when Prim is called out to play in the Hunger Games, and what was her name? Katniss said, "No, I will be tribute for my sister." Something called her to step into the place. And then it required that they both go somewhere, Hogwarts or the capital. So the call, the first chapter is about getting the call and taking the step out into life. It will look different for every single person, but every one of us will feel it in some way, that we know that the life we're living is not using enough of me. Sometimes it comes through a tragic event that we know we have to step up. We saw a lot of this 2 years ago right now. We had 100 people in this church and in this community flooded by Hurricane Harvey, and I saw it all over, people stepping up, people stepping in. They heard a call, and they responded. They moved out of their ordinary routine into something. Mucking out houses is not fun, is it? The people in this church did it. People gave financially to support this. People were willing to be up and out of who they normally thought themselves to be. That is the beginning of the hero's journey. And I want to say, too, that this journey is not a one-time occurrence in a human lifetime. If you're on a spiritual path, you're going to be called many times. They're all echoes of the one call, which is for you to be you, completely, wholly, and freely. Jesus told a beautiful story of the hero's journey. It was called the prodigal son. You remember the young man felt the call to greatness, well, actually to debauchery, but that works too. That was part of my journey. To leave home. Something is in the greater world is calling us. The second chapter, the transformation, it takes place in what Campbell calls the special world. It's not like the ordinary world. It's unknown. It's different. The first thing that's going to happen is the hero will face all sorts of challenges and adversaries, trials. The things are not working out quite the way my agenda said it was going to. For the prodigal, that meant the wine woman and song ended, and hunger, poverty came. I guess the climax of the story in that second act is the death of what was. The old way of being is over. It's coming face to face with the deepest fear, the darkest night of the soul. For the prodigal, it was wanting to eat with the pigs that he was paid to feed. That the old life of being the privileged son of the landowner was gone. All of that hubris and pride was gone. It was being humbled to that degree that he was in the mud and said, I can't live like this. There must be something more. For Harry Potter, it was in the final scenes in the last book in the Deathly Hallows. Do you remember he was in the enchanted forest? Voldemort, he sacrificed himself, gave himself up to Voldemort, and we thought he died. There is often a death and a resurrection of some type in these stories, and there are many of these in your own stories too. The old identities you had. For many people, the hero's journey comes as a divorce. All the identity you had as being that married person and being saw in a certain way, the way you felt, that's gone. You've got, who am I now? And the next part in that second act is the transformation. Something new emerges, a new power. And so as the hero prepares to return home, they have something they carry with them they didn't have before. And for us on the spiritual journey, it's a deeper awareness of God's presence in, through, and as our very lives. And so the third and final chapter is the return home. And we do come back to the lives of chop wood, carry water. We do come back to the lives of paying bills, in case you didn't know. But we do so changed. We understand life as in a different way. There is more meaning and importance in what we're bringing. We understand who and what we are in a different way. It's a beautiful journey. Go watch some Harry Potter. You'll love it. It's so good. See it through this lens. This is who and what we're about. Is the call out into a world that we do not understand or have never yet experienced, trusting that, as Tony's saying, great is thy faithfulness. There is a spiritual reality that will never fail us. So where does your greatness come from? You probably heard this saying, some are born great, some have greatness thrust upon them. Well, I'm going to tell it a little bit differently. All are born great, and all have greatness thrust upon them. There is an inner and an outer component of the way God equips us to make our journey of spirit, of discovery, of the hero's journey. The inner is all of the ways that we've been gifted, the talents, the intellect, everything that we natively have been given to bring to life, who and what we authentically are. That is the greatness that we're born into. But there is also an external component. It's the time and the condition in which we find ourselves that shapes us, that calls particularly something out of us now because it's needed in our culture, in our world, in our church. That we have the greatness thrust upon us because we're the ones here. Have you noticed? Ain't nobody else coming. It's us. If we are waiting for somebody else to come and rescue us, where does that make us? It puts us in victim consciousness. But if I am the one that God will use to transform this condition I find myself in, that's the power. And all of it is the energy of God. This is the amazing thing about life that I keep completely being blown away by. No matter how difficult the chapter is, no matter what the struggle is, I am always transformed by it into a greater version of myself, if I'm willing to bring myself fully to it. This is the beauty of what we're talking about today. Everything in life is conspiring for your good, for your authentic discovery and delivery of yourself. One of our co-founders, Myrtle Fillmore, she said it this way: God is the only reality of us. All else is but a shadow that is cast by some foolish belief or unwise combination of thoughts and the elements of being. When we let light flood us with its sunshine, all clouds vanish, and we begin to see ourselves in new ways of doing, which lead to wholeness and health and satisfaction and growth. And the opportunity to open to that spiritual light of awareness often comes in the very thing that we never wanted to happen. The thing we feared most is here. He filed for divorce. There's no more money. The business is broke. The child is addicted. The things that we feared often will reveal themselves right in front of us. And at that moment, what do we believe about God? What do we believe about who we are? That is the crucible of our transformation. That's just where God gets you, right where she wants you. He wants you. It wants you. That's the cooperative energy of the journey, is that we're called for a time exactly like this. Now, when these things happen, when the tragedy strikes, when the unwanted experience is right here, we have one of three ways that we will usually approach it. One is we want to figure it out with our human mind, our egoic intellect, and we will manage the details. We'll manage the heck out of those details, trying to figure it out. Have you ever tried that one? Can you feel how tired I am thinking about it? That's one way. We come at it with our human figuring outedness. The second way is we deny that it's even happening. Spiritual people never do this. It's all good. It's all God. Really. No. A term for that is called spiritual bypass. We don't transform the darkness in our life by pretending it ain't dark. Which leads us to the third, and which is the way I'm going to highly recommend, is that we bring our spiritual principles, but we bring our open heart and engage with life. We bring ourselves fully to it. Because we could have just meditated, and those homes that were flooded would still be flooded today. But we brought ourselves to it wholeheartedly. We stepped into transformation. I want to share with you briefly. Some of you may remember Maggie Cole, the spiritual teacher. She was here with me on this stage in March, and she and I taught a workshop together, and she's been a dear friend, a prayer partner for many, many years. She has a defining moment, the thing that no one would ever want to happen in their life, that happened in her life many years ago. Her 7-year-old son was severely burned in a house fire. Over 73% of his body was burned. This was the dark night of her soul and his. And she described in a blog this week a moment in the burn unit there in the hospital in San Francisco. Maggie is very present. If you sat in her workshop or in her teaching, you know she is here fully. And one of the things that she knows and values is the power of human touch. And so when you've been hugged by this beautiful soul, you feel that warmth, and she's really there. She'll place a hand upon your hand. And here she was in the burn unit of this hospital with her beloved child, single mom, only child, burned over most of his body. She had to search for the places where she could place her hand upon his body, his right cheek, his right shoulder. If you've gone through this experience or if you know about it, they have to take healthy skin that has been not burned and graft it onto the worst of the wounds. And so she said as they were going through this process of the grafts, there were fewer and fewer places where she could touch her child. And another thing that happens in the graft process is that if it works, if the graft is taking, it becomes very itchy and uncomfortable. It's actually a good thing. It means that everything is wiring up and the graft is going to take. But for the patient, it's incredibly irritating and hard to take. Well, Rob had had another series of grafts over his chest, and over the dressing, they had developed a new kind of fabric or material they could place on the wound, which allowed her to touch him while the graft was healing. And the nurse showed her how to gently stroke it. She had to get, gloved and, what do they call those? The gown, thank you, the gown. And so she could be in there, and she would gently stroke her son's chest where the graft was, and it was enough to ease the itching. And she was so grateful that she could touch him in this, be a part of his healing process, that she cried. And they were watching Star Trek, and he loved Star Trek, and she just had this moment in the middle of this horribly dark night of her soul, there was light, there was hope, there was connection, there was touch. A commercial came on during Star Trek, and she wasn't paying attention, but what she noticed was that his body began to convulse. And at first she was terrified, thinking something was wrong. And then she heard a sound, and she realized he was laughing at a cat food commercial. That kind of laugh where you can't control your body. And he hadn't laughed in the weeks since he had been burned. In that burn unit, there were many people in those 6 weeks who were less severely burned than Rob, who had died in that process. It's not a pleasant place to be. And the staff, the nurses particularly, who are caring for these patients, it is a hard place to work. And they loved this kid. He had spirit and spunk. And when they heard him laughing, the nurses came running into the room with tears pouring down their faces. And they met Maggie's eyes. And the light of possibility and transformation was born right there. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what the struggle or the problem is. I'm not afraid of the word problem, because for me, my God is bigger than any problem. So when I say the word problem, that just means solution is coming. Transformation is coming. And I don't know what yours is, but I know you got one, because everybody does. And your biggest problem is simply the place where God is trying to be made more real and present in your life right now. Today, if you're willing to bring yourself fully to it, give yourself, come engaged in life, open-hearted, come with your possibility mind instead of your victim mind. If you begin to approach the problems and the struggles in your life from this place, wait and see what will happen. Do not lose heart. I'd like to close with a little bit of an essay by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, and she talks about growing up on Lake Michigan, and she said, I can see the ships that are seaworthy. And she uses that metaphor in here. I don't want to read the whole essay. But this essay is really an encouragement to us to not lose hope. No matter what's going on, to see ourselves as the hero on a journey rather than the victim. She says, ours is not the task of fixing the entire world at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale of the storm. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of your soul throws sparks, sends up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. The display of the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy towards others, both of these are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. There will always be times when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. The reason is this. In my uttermost bones, I know something, as do you. It is that there can be no despair when you remember why you came to earth, who you serve, and who sent you here. The good words we say and the good deeds we do are not our own. They are the words and the deeds of the one who brought us here. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what the great ships are for. I preach, thank you. Thank Clarissa. It's the same lesson, the same sermon, the same message over and over again. There are really 3 parts. But I still want you to come back and hear it. It's going to be different every week. You are the light of the world. You're more than you know yourself to be. You are greater than you ever dreamed yourself to be. I know this to be true for you. That's my job, is to stand here and remind you that I know who you are, and I don't buy your BS, your belief system. I don't buy it. The second is that your light is needed now. Just as we needed to come together as a community to do our best to help restore those who got flooded in Harvey 2 years ago. Your light is needed in some way. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the need is. I do know this. There is a space shaped just like you in this world for you to be who you are and give your gift. And the third thing I always tell you, which I want to remind you of again, it's a lot more fun to shine our light together in sacred community. If you don't know where you can serve or what you can do, start here. We will give you opportunities to explore how you might serve others, how you might shine as your authentic self. You may have been excluded from other churches. We're not going to do that here. We are open and embracing. Our differences, our diversity is our greatest strength. I think that's all I have to say. I missed you. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today.
I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.